Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. You guys, I can't get over President Holland's talk in General Conference. It was the first talk. It set the tone for the rest of conference, and it's a talk unlike any that I had ever heard. So my mind just keeps coming back to it. And as I've been going through this book called Life of Heber C. Kimball, this is where we find out about the pulpits of the Kirtland Temple, that they're patterned after Adam's altar in Adam-on-Diamond. And he relates like what happened during the dedication and 3 days later. And then on April 6th, like all these like visitations and visions, which I'm still like combing through this to find more. I was like preparing another video that had to do with the redemption of Zion. And I realized that this goes along perfectly with President Holland's talk, along with other talks that were given in this last General Conference. But the idea of redeeming Zion and what that means and what kind of people we need to be in order to do that, and how we've been given some pretty sharp warnings about what the expectations are, what we need to be doing, and what we need to not be doing when Christ comes. So I have this all together. We're going to go over part of his talk, Elder David A. Bednar's talk, Put on Thy Strength, O Zion, about wearing the wedding garment, part of Heber C. Kimball's book, and then Sisters of Zion by President Eyring, because he had some pretty explicit talk in there. And then finally, President Nelson, Overcome the World and Find Rest. Like it all goes together, and it's pretty incredible. So before I do, just a couple things. Number one, make sure to subscribe to Aurora and Beth and Jessica. Aurora is from Washington State, and she has the My podcast. She's now up over 100. Before promoting these channels, she was like at 40 subscribers, but it's like gone way, way up to over 100. Try and get her to 200. Same thing with Beth. And then also Jessica, she's almost at 200. She is just trucking along. So Aurora from Washington State, Beth from Kentucky, and Jessica from Ohio. I just recently visited with her earlier this month when I went to go see the eclipse. She made it possible for me to go to the Kirtland Temple and see the eclipse. So make sure to subscribe to them. Please support them, because it's people like this that are going to bring in, large numbers of people into the church. They're going to attract the good women of the church. That's the whole reason why I'm promoting these channels. And pretty soon I'll be doing an interview with Beth and Aurora. So that'll come in upcoming weeks. Make sure to subscribe to them. Please support them, and please help their voices be heard by subscribing and supporting them. And then also, before we get into the main topic of this video, I just want to show you this spreadsheet again, this that I just recently put together. It's called Timeline Visitations. And actually, I'm going to change that to Visions and Visitations. I just haven't done that yet. So what I wanted to do is put together a timeline of every visitation or vision that we know about. And I know that there's a lot out there, so it's going to take a long time for me to, get very far with this. But so far, we have a bunch from the Kirtland period, both in the Kirtland Temple and then just in Kirtland, Ohio in general. So what I have right now, just a quick review. So we have this story that I covered, I think it was in like 2 videos ago, a visitation of Jesus Christ to Joseph Smith and his family, and Martin Harris and Mary Elizabeth Leitner. It was a pretty incredible experience that they had. Christ was there. And then later on, at the dedication of the Kirtland Temple, there was an unknown angel that was sent to accept the dedication of the Kirtland Temple. There's a description of him. You can read it all here. If you double click on column I, account, it'll have the entire account of that visitation. So visitation by an angel. And then 3 days later, there was a solemn assembly in the Kirtland Temple, and there was a visitation by John the Beloved. He made an appearance. And then on April 6th, just generally, there were angels that were there. This was a special day set apart it was basically like a priesthood meeting. And it was a day for a day appointed for fasting and prayer. The washing of feet took place, which is an ordinance, and then other things. So there were a bunch of angels that showed up to that. And then I have a vision. So I separate the two, because it's one thing for a heavenly person, a resurrected being or a spirit to actually be in your physical proximity, like wherever you're at. And it's another thing for you to have, I think, a vision where it's like your mind, your spirit is, you know, has like a vision, however that works, of some other place. Like you don't actually go there, but you're like seeing it. So I separate the two. But in this one, this was a vision of God the Father, Jesus Christ, and Adam. It was a vision of Joseph Smith in relation to the 12 apostles. And then I'll just keep trucking along and keep filling this up as time goes on. Okay, so let's get to President Holland's talk. This is just stunning. So he says, against the backdrop of Christ's victory over death and his recent gift to me of a few more weeks or months in mortality. Okay, so he's saying, look, you guys, he has given me a gift of a few more weeks or months. And we've talked about this. Elder Renlund, when he visited him in the hospital, from his own experience, he was like, okay, this is not looking good. I think he's done. But miraculously, he recovered his strength and he got out of the hospital. But it seems like it's probably only for a short amount of time. And who knows what else he's going to do between now and the time that he passes through the veil. But I think one of the things he was meant to do was to give this very talk. It was the first talk of General Conference. And he starts it by kind of lighting the mood, or lightening the mood, making the mood lighter, by kind of like joking around, because later on what he had to say was pretty serious. So, okay, so in the context of receiving the gift of a few more weeks or months immortality, I bear solemn witness of the reality of eternal life and the need for us to be serious in planning for it. Then, after talking about like mortality in general, then he says, I bear witness that when Christ comes, like at the second coming, he needs to recognize us, not as nominal members listed on a faded baptismal record, but as thoroughly committed, faithfully believing, covenant-keeping disciples. This is an urgent matter for all of us, lest we ever hear the devastating regret, I never knew you. Or, as Joseph Smith translated that phrase, you never knew me. So he acknowledges the need to be ready, both for if you pass on from this life, but he also talks about the second coming and how we have to be thoroughly committed, faithfully believing, covenant-keeping disciples. Recently, I don't know, like a couple weeks ago, I did a video about garments, because that's something that they brought up a number of times throughout conference, is the need to wear the temple garment and how serious that is. That's part of the covenant that you made when you went to the temple. And yet people struggle with this. Either it's a hard thing to do, or they just feel like it doesn't apply to them, or that they can be the exception to the rule, or whatever, what have you. You know, I was recently looking at Facebook, and somebody, let's just say from another lifetime, is what it feels like, another lifetime. I saw her and just posting pictures of, like, not even like the family wasn't like swimming. It wasn't like something like that. She had consciously purchased short shorts, like denim shorts, and was not wearing the garments. And it's like, you know, I'm not going to judge her. I have no idea. I don't know, but it is a little bit concerning, and hopefully, you know, it's between her and the Lord. But you guys, we need to take this seriously. We need to take it seriously. He's saying that we need to be recognized as his when he comes, and not nominal members of the church. So when you go through and you make those really serious covenants, not just wearing the temple garment, but everything, we really need to like stick to that. The second coming is soon. And I talked about the fact that this conference felt like a very like 10 virgins type conference, where we were being shown what the difference is between the 5 wise virgins and the 5 foolish virgins. I want to read just a couple quotes really quick about that. The first one is from Dallin H. Oaks, at the time he was in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, a talk called Preparation for the Second Coming, and this was the April 2004 General Conference. A very unique talk. But one of the things that he said after reading the parable of the 10 virgins, he said this: the arithmetic of this parable is chilling. The 10 virgins obviously represent members of Christ's church. For all were invited to the wedding feast, and all knew what was required to be admitted when the bridegroom came. But only half were ready when he came. And then there's this other talk. This is by Lynn G. Robbins of the 70, Lynn G. Robbins of the 70, Oil in Our Lamps. This is from the June 2007 Ensign. And he says, Elder McConkie further explains that this parable is not about quote unquote good in bad, not righteous and wicked, but wise and foolish. Okay. So not good and bad, not righteous and wicked, wise and foolish. That is, all of them have accepted the invitation to meet the bridegroom. All are members of the church, but only 5 are valiant therein. End quote. In the parable, only those with oil in their lamps were able to enter the house of the bridegroom. In modern times, only those worthy of a temple recommend may enter the house of the Lord. And then later in the article, he says, in biblical times, constant effort was needed to ensure that an adequate amount of oil was maintained in lamps. In our day, we must exert constant effort to remain temple worthy. In the parable, the 10 virgins were not able to enter the door without oil. In our day, neither can we enter the door of the temple without a recommend. So there's that, right? And then Elder Bednar in the October 2022 General Conference, his whole talk was about the parable of the wedding feast in a talk called Put on Thy Strength, O Zion. And I just want to read this part. A Christian author, John O. Reed, noted that the man's refusal to wear the wedding garment, and by the way, in this talk, he uses the word garment 14 times. So he's like really trying to get you to understand what he's saying. Exemplified blatant disrespect for both king and his son. Blatant disrespect. He did not simply lack a wedding garment. Rather, he chose not to wear one. He rebelliously refused to dress appropriately for the occasion. The king's reaction was swift and decisive. Bind him hand and foot and take him away and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The king's judgment of the man is not based primarily upon the lack of a wedding garment, but that he was in fact determined not to wear one. The man desired the honor of attending the wedding feast, but did not want to follow the custom of the king. He wanted to do things his own way. This lack of proper dress revealed his inner rebellion against the king and his instructions. So, with that in mind, let's jump into the redemption of Zion, the return of the city of Enoch, and what's expected to redeem Zion and to be prepared for the second coming. So this is chapter 7 of Life of Heber C. Kimball. Heber C. Kimball was a member of the first presidency. Okay. I think he was first counselor in the first presidency at the time that he passed away. Okay. The redemption of Zion, the building of the New Jerusalem, theme of the ancient prophets and glory of the latter days. Such was the sublime mission given to the saints of the Most High. Thus came the word of God, or the word of the Lord concerning it, March 31st. And this is in Doctrine and Covenants. Wherefore I, the Lord, have said, gather ye out from the eastern lands, assemble yourselves together, ye elders of my church, go ye forth into the western countries. And with one heart and with one mind, or in other words, Zion, because Zion is one in heart and one in mind, in the pure of heart. And think about the fact that we have President Nelson, who was literally a heart surgeon, which I think symbolically is important and gives us a hint as to where we're at. He's trying to prepare Zion people. And with one heart and with one mind, gather up your riches, that ye may purchase an inheritance which shall hereafter be appointed unto you. And it shall be called the New Jerusalem, a land of peace, a city of refuge, a place of safety for the saints of the Most High God. And the glory of the Lord shall be there, and the terror of the Lord also shall be there, insomuch that the wicked will not come unto it, and it shall be called Zion. And it shall come to pass among the wicked that every man that will not take his sword against his neighbor must needs flee unto Zion for safety. And there shall be gathered unto it out of every nation under heaven, and it shall be the only people that shall not be at war with one another. And it shall be said among the wicked, let us not go up to battle against Zion, for the inhabitants of Zion are terrible, wherefore we cannot stand. And it shall come to pass that the righteous shall be gathered out from among all the nations, and shall come to Zion, singing with songs of everlasting joy. Now, really quick, I need to make mention, a lot of people will try and interpret this on their, based on their own understanding. And these verses have already been interpreted, and there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to Zion, New Jerusalem, the gathering, what it means, so on and so forth. Go to my spreadsheet or my playlist called New Jerusalem, and we go over what our prophets and apostles have said about these verses and what the Lord's plan is when it comes to New Jerusalem and what it means to have safety and refuge and to be gathered and so on and so forth. A lot of people have the false conception that the entire church is going to go to Jackson County, Missouri, or at least the righteous are going to go to Jackson County, Missouri, and that's not the case. Go down to the topic right here, column B, New Jerusalem, and I have all the quotes there for you, as well as my playlist. Okay, continuing. With this glorious object in view, this sublime motive, firing their souls and filling their hearts with holy zeal, the saints in the summer of 1831 had commenced gathering upon the land of Zion, Jackson County, Missouri, the chosen site of the great city and the temple of God. Notice, this was 1 year after the church was organized or founded. Okay, so like right away. Their purpose to fulfill prophecy to found the modern Zion, New Jerusalem, capital city of the kingdom of God, a counterpart of the Zion of Enoch, sanctified of old and taken into the heavens to return in latter times as a leaven of righteousness, to leaven this lump of clay, the mother earth of our mortality, and make it like unto itself, and in due time a glorified planet, purified, redeemed, and from sin forever free. I'm going to have to save this. He's talking about Zion, like the city of Enoch, in that it's going to have this effect on the earth over time. Okay, continuing. To prepare the world for that supreme hour when the Lord shall bring again Zion was and is the mission of the saints of latter days. And this, that the scripture might be fulfilled, which says, the Lord hath brought down Zion from above, the Lord hath brought up Zion from beneath, the earth hath travailed and brought forth her strength. The truth is established in her bowels. The heavens have smiled upon her, and she is clothed with the glory of her God, for he stands in the midst of his people. The meeting of the Zions, the marriage of the worlds. That's kind of an interesting phrase. The marriage of the worlds. Zion from beneath, the type of truth from earth, embracing Zion from above, the symbol of righteousness from heaven. And they twain shall be one. Preparatory to this miraculous event, and indeed to render it possible, the order of Enoch, the system of divine economy whereby the Zion of the ancients was redeemed and sanctified, had been newly revealed to the Zion builders of the last days. What says Moses of Enoch and his city? And the Lord called his people Zion because they were of one heart and one mind and dwelt in righteousness, and there were no poor among them. Okay, so these are some of the characteristics here of what it means to be a Zion people and to be ready for that time. To build Zion, which is not just building the New Jerusalem in Jackson County, which will happen, but building a people that are Zion. Continuing, oh, the sweetness of those simple words. Oh, the sublimity of the picture they portray. Liberty, equality, fraternity. This is Zion, the pure in heart. But the saints in Jackson County, Missouri were not all that the Lord requires of a people chosen to execute a purpose so sacred, so sublime. Okay, listen to this. This is why they weren't able to, or why they weren't permitted to build New Jerusalem at that time. There were jarrings and contentions and envyings and strifes and lustful and covetous desires among them. Therefore, by these things they polluted their inheritances. Then was the lash of the Philistine applied, and they were driven from the goodly land. Satan hath his mission as well as Christ. Be it not inferred, however, that these hapless victims of mobocratic tyranny were utterly wicked and depraved, or that all were equally culpable in the eyes of him who, to punish the transgressors, permitted their enemies to come against them. With all their faults, they were better far than their oppressors, more than the peers in every Christian virtue of the people of the world around them. Yet, judged by the higher law, the gospel standard, which the world had not received and were not under the same obligation to obey, these children of the light, quote unquote, were found remiss in many things. The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a field of grain gathered unto the threshing floor. The purpose of the divine punishment is to purify. Upon the wheat and the chaff alike fell the iron flail of persecution. Okay, so there were issues, and just in general, the church needed to be purified, refined, tried, and tested. And so I think that we're getting to that point. I think that's why there's so much talk, like what we're hearing in General Conference. Some of the stuff that we already read, and then a few more things that we're going to read in just a minute from Sisters in Zion and Overcome the World and Find Rest by Presidents Eyring and Nelson, respectively. Okay, now we're going to skip to a different part of life of Heber C. Kimball. So this is after he talks about that initial effort to redeem Zion with Zion's camp. They were initially going to try and take it forcefully and reclaim their land, but the Lord said it wasn't time to do that, and that's not how it was going to be done. So after telling that story, we get to this part of the book, and this is, again, Heber C. Kimball. But what of Zion and her redemption? Let the word of the Lord, the God of Enoch, the God of Joseph, give answer. Quote, the redemption of Zion must needs come by power, end quote. Power dwells in unity, right? That's the definition of Zion, is the one of heart and one of mind. So how are you going to build Zion if you're not Zion? Power dwells in unity, not in discord. In humility, not pride. In sacrifice, not selfishness. Obedience, not rebellion. And with this last one here, we just talked about one example of obedience versus rebellion in wearing the temple garment. But there's many, many, many other things. Everyone has their own things that they need to work on and fix, but you need to get yourself to a certain standard so that you're ready when the Lord comes, so you can attend the wedding feast. You're going to want to do that. Okay, continuing. Zion's camp, if it failed at all in fulfilling its mission, failed for precisely similar reasons to those which had caused the expulsion of the saints from Jackson County. Reasons which, in ancient times, kept Israel wandering for 40 years in the wilderness, within sight of their coveted Canaan, which they were not permitted in that generation to possess. Like Moses, these modern pilgrims beheld, as from Pisgah's top, their promised land. Like Moses, on account of transgression, they were not permitted to cross over. No doubt there were Caleb's and Joshua's in the camp who were worthy, but the great event in the wisdom of the highest was not then destined to be. We talk about this occasionally, this whole concept of the number 40, how it's a time, again, a lot of people will say it's a time of testing and trial, and yeah, it is. But like I said, I think it's more a number of cleansing. So here you had the Israelites that were taken out of Egypt, but they weren't ready to possess the promised land. They had to go through a cleansing. And with Noah in the flood, that cleansed the earth. And that was 40 days and 40 nights. And in this last general conference, I should have pulled this up. I wasn't thinking about it. President Nelson, in his talk, I don't know that this has any significance, but I tend to think that it does. He pointed out in his talk, rejoice in the gift of priesthood keys. It's like the first thing that he says. My dear brothers and sisters, today is an historic day for President Dallin H. Oaks and me. It was 40 years ago on April 7th, 1984, when we were sustained to the quorum of the 12 apostles. Some people will look at that and just be like, oh, they're just kind of like showing us, like, oh, look how long we've, it's just like remembering, their time as I don't think so. I think there's something to President Nelson's age. A lot of you feel the same. He's going to turn 100 years old this year on September 9th. And we've talked a lot about his age. But if we're looking at these two, and one of them are going to be the president of the church at the time of the second coming, then I think there's maybe a whole lot more symbolism that's going on. And we've talked about the unusual circumstances in which the two of them were called to the apostleship. It's a really interesting story. I'm not going to recite it here, but you can search it on my channel. Just search President Oaks. You'll find it, or Salt Lake City flood. That should bring up the video. But anyway, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if during this time, from the time that they became apostles until now, maybe that's been one phase of cleansing in the church and getting ready to possess the promised land, meeting the millennium, as well as building up the New Jerusalem in Jackson County. Okay, so continuing, it was left for a future generation, and it's Joshua, to go up in the might of the Lord and redeem Zion. Yet, not alone upon Zion's camp must rest the responsibility of their failure to redeem Zion. It bears with at least equal weight upon those whom they came to succor. What said the Lord concerning them? Behold, they have not learned to be obedient, but are full of all manner of evil, and do not impart of their substance, as becometh saints, to the poor and afflicted among them. Is not the episode of the fowl related by Heber a telltale straw before the wind in this connection? Can a people honeycombed with selfishness build up Zion? And that's this is like another one of the key points is selfishness, pride, selfishness. Just like the Book of Mormon talks about, you had these like class distinctions and people were puffed up in pride because of their material wealth. Are we guilty of this? I hope not. It seems like it's one of the key things. Continuing, and by the way, and that's not a commentary on having wealth. I think everybody should try and have wealth, because when you do, you can do a lot of good. Look at Larry H. Miller and how he's the one that provided the funding for the Joseph Smith Papers project. It was him, and I think it was like $10 million. So he wouldn't have been able to do that unless he had success, like worldly success. But I think where we start to have problems is if we see our success as we're better than other people, and we don't share, or we don't consecrate that to the Lord, into the building up of his kingdom. So Larry H. Miller, he did that. It was not cheap to do that. All right, continuing. And are not united according to the union required by the law of the celestial kingdom. Again, that injunction of unity, the secret of Zion's redemption. Except ye are one, ye are not mine. And Zion cannot be built up unless it is by the principles of the law of the celestial kingdom. Otherwise, I cannot receive her unto myself. Wonderful, revealing this. What is it but to say that the united order, the order of Enoch, the order of Zion, is the order of the celestial worlds, where the gods, a divine brotherhood, have all things in common. Therefore, it is expedient in me that mine elders should wait for a little season for the redemption of Zion. It is marvelous that this should be, that a work of such magnitude should require preparation, that Zion, city of holiness, should be built up only by the pure in heart. Ah, reader, the redemption of Zion is more than the purchase or recovery of lands. Now, pay attention to this, because some people don't understand this. They think that it is about the purchase of lands or the conquering of lands or Kansas City being destroyed through nuclear warfare or something like that. Okay, let's do this again. Ah, reader, the redemption of Zion is more than come on. Okay, pull it together. Ah, reader, the redemption of Zion is more than the purchase or recovery of lands, the building of cities, or even the founding of nations. It is the conquest of the heart, the subjugation of the soul, the sanctifying of the flesh, the purifying and ennobling of the passions. Greater is he who subdues himself, who captures and maintains the citadel of his own soul, than he who, misnamed conqueror, fills the world with the roar of drums and thunder of cannon, the lightning of swords and bayonets, overturns and sets up kingdoms, lives, and reigns a king, yet wears to the grave the fetters of unbridled lust and dies the slave of sin. In her children's hearts, Zion first be built up and redeemed. In her children's hearts, that's where you first build up Zion. And so we've been doing that this entire time. You know, how much progress have we made since that time? I don't know. I'm not a pessimistic person. I think that we've come a long way. There's obviously, there's always going to be the tares in the church. And we just talked about the arithmetic of the parable of the 10 virgins, right? So it's not like the entire church is going to be where they're supposed to be. It seems like half of them are not going to be where they're supposed to be. But if you compare the church now compared to back then, I don't know. Only the Lord knows, because only he can see into our hearts. But I'm willing to bet that we're getting really close, and that the church as a whole, the wheat of the church as a whole, has made a lot of progress. So in her children's hearts must Zion first be built up and redeemed. Every man seeking the interest of his neighbor and doing all things with an eye single to the glory of God. When the fig tree of Israel's faith puts forth such leaves, then know that summer is nigh. And this cannot be brought to pass until mine elders are endowed with power from on high. Yet were these same elders unendowed sent forth to redeem Zion? Surely the Lord did not design it then to be, else would he not have endowed them beforehand. This admitted, and what becomes their failure? Ah, there are many such failures in a sublime success. They are but steps in the stairway of triumph and victory. What did Zion's camp achieve? It cast the shadow of a coming event, struck the spark that shall kindle to a flame, fixed on the horizon of history a shining star, the herald of a glory yet to come. Okay, and then we're going to finish it up with these two talks, or just like a part of these two talks, an excerpt. So this is from the October 2020 General Conference, President Eyring. It's called Sisters in Zion. He reads from the book of Moses, talking about the city of Enoch and the city of Enoch joining with the New Jerusalem on the earth. And then right after that, he says, you sisters, your daughters, your granddaughters, and the women you have nurtured will be at the heart of creating that society of people who will join in glorious association with the Savior. So grandmas, moms, daughters, and granddaughters, you are the ones that are going to build this society that's going to join with the city of Enoch in the Savior. And then he says, you will be an essential force in the gathering of Israel and in the creation of a Zion people who will dwell in peace in the New Jerusalem. So you guys, please support these channels. Okay. Aurora, Beth, Jessica, and I have more too. So I just added Liberty Mills Homestead. This is a husband and wife, and they recently started a channel, so make sure to check them out. But help these voices be heard. Subscribe, if nothing else, at least to like support these channels and help them grow. Your subscription does matter, so please do it. Please do it. Just go through here and subscribe to all of them. You will be doing good by doing so, and it'll also be good for you to actually consume their content, because I know they're all putting out good stuff. Okay, and then lastly, this is President Nelson, and I think this was a pretty pivotal talk. Overcome the world and find rest. Sister Nelson, during the special area devotional for Alberta and British Columbia, said that they knew that this General Conference, October 2022, would be a singular event because of the sheer number of attacks on the church in the lead up to that conference. She said that there always is, but this one in particular, there was a lot of opposition in the lead up to this one. And I think it has to do with this. President Nelson said, "As I have stated before, the gathering of Israel is the most important work taking place on the earth today. One crucial element of this gathering is preparing a people who are able," so think about the redemption of Zion, "who are able, ready, and worthy to receive the Lord when he comes again. A people who have already chosen Jesus Christ over this fallen world, a people who rejoice in their agency to live the higher, holier laws of Jesus Christ. I call upon you, my dear brothers and sisters, to become this righteous people." Who? The people who are able, ready, and worthy to receive the Lord when he comes again. He calls upon us to be that people. So let's do it. Let's put away our idols, meaning if you spend too much time watching sports, going hunting, social media, whatever, the things that you prioritize above the gospel and above the Lord, put those things away. It doesn't mean that you can't do them at all. Just don't have them be your top priority and don't give so much time to them. Put away idols. Wear the temple garment. Keep your covenants. Keep the Sabbath day holy. Pay tithing. But I think almost more important than any of those, not saying that it's like either do this or you do it all together. I think most importantly, you watch how you treat people and how you view people. If you think that you're better than other people, then that's the wrong answer. In this test of life, that's the wrong answer. It's the wrong answer. It's the wrong answer if you think that you're better than other people and you have that pride. So if that's your major malfunction, you need to work on that and don't do that. Feel unity. Feel love. Do the scary thing and look inside yourself. I know that can be scary, but look inside yourself and think about the things that you need to do internally when it comes to your interactions with your brothers and sisters. Because when Christ comes, you better be, if you want to participate in these things, you need to be recognized as his, and you need to understand his ways. And a lot of it has to do with how we treat each other. Obeying the Lord, right? The first great commandment is to love the Lord, your God, and then the second is to love your neighbor. We need to be doing both of those things. We need to be obeying our Heavenly Father and the Lord, and we need to treat each other with love and dignity and respect. So, okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.